profiling does help our system, but at the same time, would we want to help our system for the risk of discrimination?
So, is there a speaker that would like to start?
Well, Matt, even though you bring up the point that it is effective, just because it's effective does not make it morally correct. I mean, because it's so immorally correct and just so, well, racist, it really shouldn't be used because, well, think about it. There have been, like, in many times throughout our history, like, where we've been saying, oh, like, you know, not just our history, but in all of history, where you just, like, blame a certain group or something, and we say, oh, there are black people in this neighborhood, and, you know, it is racist, so you can't just do that, even if it does work, because it's just so morally incorrect.
Okay. Although I do agree with the moral aspect of what Justin said, morals are not what keep our country and keep our people protected. Laws do. And with all due respect, I have to say that being the grandson of a former LAPD officer for 31 years who specialized in narcotics and drugs, rolling through South Central LA, rolling through Compton, rolling through the ghetto, all those places like that, I'm pretty sure that if I'm rolling around and I see one guy rolling up with a Rolls-Royce Phantom with 24-inch rims on it, I'm kind of going to want to ask him, you know, how he got the money to get that. I'm sorry, it's racist, but people in that area tend to be charged a lot more for gas because they're on the poor end, and their taxes are higher than richer people. So if you think about it, if you look at the way our system works, he shouldn't be able to afford that, which means he's likely to have participated in illegal activity. I think it's wrong, but it works.
What I was saying was that, of course, you know, that's a hypothetical situation that he is right that it does work. The fact is that that's not how we're using, you know, stereotyping. Profiling. That's not the way we're using profiling. We're the institution of justice is using racial profiling to actually, you know, see that criminals by their appearance. Now we're all familiar with that, you know, term. Don't judge a book by its cover, right? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that makes perfect sense here because that leads, you know, people who are looking for.
What was that?
I'm a little bit in the middle about this, although I have to lean to the side of that it can be effective. You're looking at, say, legal immigration in Arizona, where they've taken action to stop the illegal immigrants. Obviously, you're not going to be running around looking for, you know, white people unless you're up north. You're looking for Canadians. So if you see, you know, 6 Mexicans riding in a Suburban going north, obviously you're going to want to pull that car over. And like Aram said, if you see someone riding through the ghetto with a Rolls-Royce Ghost, it's a little bit suspicious. So, you know, since our justice system and our law enforcement system doesn't really have a strict code of ethics on how to pull people in, officers kind of have to use their gut, and a lot of times racial profiling is the only thing they have to go on.
I would like to point out too that this topic does reach immigration. So racial profiling to people who look illegal, that is where this topic also reaches, not just black guy, rich immigrant.
So I do agree that racial profiling does have effectiveness, but racial profiling is only as good as the stereotype that is used to profile that person. For example, if someone who is white, if you're doing something wrong and a cop sees this white person driving by, he's not going to think very much, because how many stereotypes of there, negative stereotypes of there are white people? But if you see someone like a Mexican in maybe a car that seems
something called empirical data. Basically, when I use my 5 senses to observe, if statistically speaking, that people from a lower economic background are more likely to be criminals, and if it so happens that certain people, certain races are more likely to be from a lower economic background due to their race, then it's empirical data. We are applying science to criminology. What is so wrong about it? Think about it. First, and also, what you guys say is wrong, I see no problem with. You guys are all saying, oh, it's morally wrong, blah, blah, blah. I don't agree with that. So if my morals are different than yours, how can we set a global standard? How can we say whose morals are right? Are you going to start a philosophical debate on this? And one more thing, it's not racist to be profiling. It is, again, as I said, applying empirical data. You see a little Puerto Rican Matty come up with his baseball bat and like sagging pants and a gun. I'm going to be a little threatened more than if I see some like me walking down the street, like, I'm not a threatening person. I can walk out anywhere and nobody's going to feel threatened. You bring up like Aram over there, you put a baseball bat on his shoulder and sagging his little pants, put a little gold earring, like that. God help us all, right?
I don't think it should be strictly on like facial or color of skin. It should be like based on like how they carry themselves and their clothing and like multiple factors. If it's just the color of the skin, I don't think that's enough. Like if they like carry themselves like bad and their facial expressions look harsh, then that's more reason to like go to the person regardless of color.
Say they're a crack addict, they're going to have the facial features, everything's going to start sinking in, just baggy eyes, just all that. Well, you kind of get the image, think of a pocket hippie. Well, you can start using that, and they get drugs, where do they get it from? And you can kind of just work your way up.
Pretend like our decision is going to determine whether or not it will or will not be, okay? Because most of us do know, racial profiling is just going to be used anyway, but what can we do about it? What's there to debate if we can't do anything about it? Well, pretend like we can do something about it and then debate it from there. Thanks.
Okay, so yes, I agree that it might be slightly racist, but if what you're doing is legal, if you have that car legally or you're carrying that baseball bat for a reason, then why should you care? The cop's going to question you and he's going to let you go. So I don't really see what the big deal is if what you're doing is fine, because, yeah.
All right, so let me give you 2 examples. First, let's talk about a racist. If you had a camera, I would just take a picture of Byung and post it on Facebook, because that's a complete racist right there. All of his statements were racist. He described an African-American male wearing a golden earring, saggy pants, and he says, oh, he's probably the one that's going to kill someone, rolling on with a gun. But then when we look at people the psychopathic killers, there's no identity that they actually have to have certain clothing. Like, for all you know, the most smartest people around you can be the psychopathic killers. So basing our information off of the way they look is completely fallacious. First of all, what Aram said, that in our jurisdiction we have to use racial profiling because it has to happen. That's not true. I picture everyone in this room as just a big black blob. You guys are all ugly to me, big black blobs. I look at personality instead. I look at empirical data that we all, basically, Byung falsely stated that empirical data is in being racist. No, that's not true. Just because our statistics, which 99% of them are made up, who knows, I just made that up right now. Basically, statistics are false. You can't say just because someone's African American, they're going to do something bad, or higher odds of African American people do that. No, it's because your geography, where you're born, that leads to something. That leads to killings, that leads to murder because of the culture. Not because you're sagging your jeans or anything. I killed someone. I'm just kidding, no I didn't. But I'm saying, basically, I told you I killed someone, now I see you guys mouth drop. Well, what the heck? I thought you guys said brown people are terrorists. Isn't that all brown people terrorists? And why, when I said that, why did you guys all drop your mouths? You see, you guys can't use that as empirical data. Basically, being racist is not the right way to find crime.